Hey guys! So in this video we are going to talk about the @supports tag in CSS, so let's get into it. Now, it wasn't all that long ago that I watched a very famous CSS sort of channel here on YouTube. I'm not going to mention any names or anything like that, but it's a fairly large channel. Well, large-ish anyway. It's one of my favorite ones when it comes to web design. And so basically we were introduced in this video to the concept of the supports tag. Now that's not something new, but it's fairly new. And the idea the person in this video was kind of promoting was that you can use the @supports tag to just verify that your style of writing CSS is actually supported in the browser of your choice, or the one that you're working in. So an example of this is, of course, if you want to use something like CSS Grid in order to, just to do your layout right. Now, traditionally, what you would do in older browsers is to use a float system, for example, or a slightly younger browser could use something like Flexbox, maybe. But with the @supports sign, the idea is that you can use whatever you want and just check if that thing is supported and then have a fallback. Now, this is me expressing my personal opinion on this, and to me, the supports tag is the weirdest thing ever. I think it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Well, not the dumbest thing, but I think it's really stupid. I really do. I think it's really dumb. And let me tell you why I think it's really dumb. So the idea is, from my perspective, that your workflow will literally go this way. So your workflow will be, I work with the modern browsers, I do everything that my designer wants, and I have the mindset and the perspective that I should write code in a fashion that is compliant with the modern browsers, but are also depending on the modern browser APIs in order to work. And then I realized that, I actually need to account for the really old browsers, so then I have to make a check that the thing that I made originally is gonna work. And then in hindsight, I create a fallback in order to make it work. Now, just think about that for a moment. That literally means that you are ignoring a restriction to your requirements. Because if you have a restriction on a really old browser, maybe you're really lucky and all you really need to account for is the CSS. But in my experiences, it's not only CSS that factors in here, it's JavaScript factors in as well. And it's very rare that I've been in a situation where backwards compatibility has only required me to consider the CSS part of my web page. So here we are now. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say that my design and the layout that I'm using, or the web page that I've created, is now depending on CSS Grid. And then I have JavaScript that depends on the structure of this, basically the behavior of my application is depending on the CSS working in a certain way and being able to use certain class names to do certain transformations or stuff of that nature. I have some type of interaction going on here. Now, if I use the support tag, that means that I literally have to have two implementations. I have to have one where, say, the JavaScript, for example, assumes or can assume that the behavior is using, say, Flexbox. And then I have to have another system, in theory, that would have to work in the old browsers that uses the old browser APIs. So here's my question. If you are aware that you need to support things that go really back, like far back in time, if you are the sort of company that needs to support really old browsers, why in the world would you write software that is uncompliant with the oldest version that you are supporting? Now, this is my personal experience, because this person in on this channel was promoting the idea that we should always write CSS that works in every single browser for every single client, yada yada. It's bullshit. Bullshit. If a really large company, I'm saying we're talking Google size here, it has to support, yeah, sure, at that size, supporting every single possible device is a good thing, because even a slight percentage of users is going to represent for them a lot more income. I mean, if they're supporting the most obscure old browsers, and that just makes up 1% of their total users, 1% of the type of volumes that they are moving is going to convert into millions. For a small-sized company or like a startup or something like that, that's not even worth your time. It's actually going to cost you more in development time to just maintain all of these, like to support all the browsers, than it's going to give you in return on investment. So I can tell you from experience, from somebody who's been doing this for a few years, no one cares about the really obscure browsers, like the really uncommon ones. Most of the companies that I've worked for, and I've worked for small companies, I've worked for large companies, and I've talked to I have tons of friends who work at this in the same way. None of these companies support any, even consider other browsers than the three main ones, or four main ones: Mozilla, IE, well, Edge these days, Chrome, and Safari. That's it. Just over, like, across the board. And what I'm telling you guys is that, just consider this. Consider that this support tag literally means that you have to do double work, because it's what it is exactly what it means. You have to, you create a layout that simply works in the modern stuff, and then you have to create one as a fallback. Here's my take on that, apart from just it kind of giving you a situation where you have to do double work. What happens if, let's say for the sake of argument, you have to consider things such as, other factors than the fact that, yeah, sure, in the future you may be able to just deprecate all the old stuff and just move on to the new stuff. What do you think the likelihood of that is? Because the thing is that I've never worked in a backend project where somebody said, hey, you know what? Let's use a lot of experimental features, and then also write the old version, the old style of software, so that when the experimental features are fully supported, hey, we'll just use them. Apart from maybe in JavaScript, and I think that is absolutely, it's the dumbest thing ever. Transpiling to something that is not supported in order to be able to use it. I mean, you're adding a bunch of code and a bunch of complexity ahead of time, for no other reason than in the future maybe it will be supported. Here's my suggestion. Write compliant stuff that is going to work in your requirements. In other words, if you need to support old browsers, you write old code until such a time where you don't have to support that anymore, and then you migrate if you still want to. That's one approach. I will be honest, and I will say that there is one single scenario that I can really consider that is, where this makes a lot of sense, where supports might make a lot of sense. And that is on the off chance that you literally have, you have things that are so old that they get deprecated, that you're not updating things continuously, you're not actually doing your migration job. That it's not necessarily the case. I don't think that will ever happen in the browsers, but I can imagine it happening for old library dependencies or stuff of that nature. But yeah, I'll summarize by saying this. The supports tag, I don't see the point of it. I'm sorry. I'm not the best developer in the world, but I really don't see the point of it. If you are already aware of that you need to write CSS and JavaScript and so forth for old browsers, then that should be your baseline. You shouldn't be adding modern features and then adding a fallback, because as I said, you're just adding more code than you need to do your job. And if the experience is that much better with the modern code, then maybe you should have a conversation with your manager and say, hey, maybe we should stop supporting these really old browsers and focus on user experience. It's just a thought. I might be completely wrong here, but that's the way I feel about it. Have a great day.